Well, the North Carolina State Fair is over, and the Carolina Hurricanes are finally back home after a grueling couple of weeks on the road. The Canes started the road trip in San Jose minus Jacob Slavin and Pyotr Kochetkov, and they lost Shane Gostisbehere, K'Andre Miller, Eric Robinson, and William Carrier along the way. Despite all the setbacks, the Canes managed a respectable 4-2 record on the trip. What stood out for the Canes? What areas are still a work in progress? And what should we look forward to as the Canes regroup after the trip? Joining me as always to talk Canes, Aaron and Katie. Ladies, how are we tonight?
Doing good.
Great.
Well, good. We're going to be talking about a lot of interesting things. Of course, this trip was quite the trip. We couldn't have written the script of so many injuries. I don't remember players falling like this so quickly over a road trip or even at home. So it's quite the thing. I guess what I wanted to do is maybe kick it off by talking about the trip. How do we feel about it overall? Those 6 games. We talked a little bit after the first one that they had won with San Jose, and we were hopeful that they would at least do 500 and maybe better. And it seems like they did. So why don't we kick it off? And Aaron, what were your thoughts?
Well, it was certainly an eventful road trip. A lot of good things happened. Alexander Nikishin got his first goal. You know, we had a couple of other fun moments, whether I know we're going to get to later, talking about some milestones and things that the Canes crossed on the way. But like you said, it was kind of overshadowed a little bit by the sheer number of injuries. And even before the trip started, realizing that, Jacob Slavin was not going to be available. Pyotr Kochetkov was not going to be available. There were a lot of things that could have gone very wrong. I think a lot of us at the time, looking at the injuries as they began to mount up, we were thinking maybe, are they going to come back with a couple of wins in California? And maybe not all 3, because the Kings can be a handful at times. So I think that there was that sense that we didn't know for sure how this was going to go, especially because they did want to rotate Brandon Bussi in and, not rely on Frederik Andersen for the entire trip, even though there wasn't a back-to-back. But honestly, I think that for what they were facing and for what the circumstances were, the Canes wrote themselves a really positive story. People rose to the occasion. Bussi was fantastic. The young guys coming in made an impact in a positive way on the lineup. It's not what you want, and I thought that it was interesting that Rod Brind'Amour's comment after it was all said and done was looking at the number of kids on the defense and so on. It's not sustainable. You can't expect to keep winning at this pace with everything that's going on. But all things considered, under the circumstances, even if it didn't always look like Canes hockey, the fact that they managed the win rate that they did was very good. And of the 2 losses, I think Sebastian Aho put it best. He repeated it today after the practice. They were right in the game against Dallas. They were in that one till the end. The only loss that was really significant in terms of they weren't really in it was the loss against Vegas. That's pretty impressive when you look at everything that was going on. So I think it's a very positive thing.
Yeah, and that for sure, the Dallas game, I think 2 goals were kind of, as they call, friendly fire. So it was a tough one. Particularly that one by Ehlers was a bit of a backbreaker, and that was tough. But the game that really caught my attention, of course, was the game against Colorado, which was just a barn burner. That was some kind of hockey game. Oh my goodness! And I'm sure, Katie, you were just all over that. So with that, I'll lead into what your thoughts were on this trip as well.
I thought they had a great trip. I'm perhaps going to take it a little bit more with a grain of salt. It's technically a 4-2-0 trip, but 2 of those wins came either in overtime or a shootout. So
Right.
A lot of the games were close, not just the games that they lost, but the games that they won as well were very close. But kudos to the Canes for sticking with it and being determined and eking out those wins, because those points are going to be important as the team goes along, and the fact that they've got them banked now and they can build off of that as they move forward. I also thought that there was, out of necessity and both out of choice, some tinkering that Brind'Amour did, some for the good, some Perhaps not as effective as we would have liked it to be, but I think it gave the team a lot of information moving forward, and they'll be stronger for it as those forward lines start to gel, as the defense gets more experience playing together, especially with the new absences that have emerged as they mix and match and try to find the right balance. I think it's going to make them stronger in the long run, having to face a little bit of adversity. I would not call this a lot of adversity just yet, but a little bit of adversity to get to a point where they can become really dominant moving forward.
Yeah, and one of the stories, of course, was the goaltending. Freddie was lights out. He was amazing, and we really got to see Brandon Bussi up, close and personal. This guy was he was in 3 games. He came and stepped up, and I thought he was outstanding in those games. His numbers look really good. He's got a 2.34 goals against average, 911 save percentage. So those numbers are solid. We talked about this in the last podcast that McKeans were raving about this guy and saying, look, he's one of the best goaltenders outside the NHL. And he looked like that. To me, he looked like a goalie that's ready to play. And for sure, he made, I don't know how many 10-bell saves. Like, he had breakaways on him. He had, all kinds of high danger chances, and he was just gobbling them up and making great plays. So I think the goaltending was great. What did you think about Bussi and Andersen, Katie?
I thought Anderson looked just like his same steady self. There, perhaps a goal here or there that, it'd be nice that he would have had made the Canes' job a little bit easier. But for early days yet in the season, he looked good. And then Bussi looked excellent. There was a Hockey Viz graphic that showed his saving area. And if you look in that high danger area right in front of the crease, it's a lot of blue. And blue for a goalie is good. It means that when teams are getting chances and shots close in, that the goalie's making those saves way more often than not. And that's definitely what you want to see. You don't want to see that he's being taken advantage of down there, either on initial shots or rebounds, or that sort of opportunity that teams like to look for, especially when they know that the goalie who is in the crease is inexperienced in the NHL.
Yeah.
So I thought he put up a very solid performance. I don't necessarily think that means that he's going to steal Kochetkov's job once Pyotr is healthy. There have been a lot of people on X talking about, oh, well, now, we don't need Pyotr, or Bussi's our backup, or he's... Come on, guys. It's 3 games. You really going to oust Kochetkov because Bussi had 3 solid games? Let's be realistic here. We've got to have a much larger sample size than that before we can come anywhere close to making such statements or declarations. So good on Bussi for his strong play, especially as it keeps Andersen healthier and fresher. But it'll be very interesting to see moving forward now that it looks like Pyotr's about to come off the shelf and be ready to play in the near future, how exactly the team manages the goalie rotation. Because with 3 goalies, there's going to be lots of decisions to be made.
Well, and the key decision right off the get-go is, are they going to keep Brandon on the roster? Because once Pyotr comes back, the question becomes, what happens with Brandon Bussi? I, for one, believe they should keep him on the roster. I mean, he's not an expensive guy, and they've got cap room. And I think the most important thing is that, we know they're going to have setbacks and injuries, and the more they can rest a guy like Freddie Andersen throughout the season and not be concerned about their goaltending, I think is good. Bussi, to me, looks like he's a tremendous third goaltender, and he may be a guy that gets more playing time depending on how he does. So not a bad situation at all. And we have to see how Pyotr's going to do. We haven't seen him at all this year. He's a guy that last year was not his best year, and he's going to have some pressure on him now for those starts. I mean, and that's a good thing. That's a good thing. And hopefully he can find his game. And then if you've got 3 of these guys going, that's that's a good story. Because I remember sometimes, as you do, when we only had one, because the other guys were injured, or sometimes none because we had Tokarski and, of course, Spencer Martin. So, yeah. Anyway, good story with the goaltending. I wanted to talk a little bit about the forward crew and what we saw. And I thought it would be interesting to kind of take a look at it in a little bit of a different way. And that is to kind of break down the lines from a perspective of, who are the players that are getting it done? And it looks like it's being done in duos. And I know you're all over this, Katie, and we've talked a little bit about this in the past. What do you think about the forward crowd, and what are these duos that you think are really getting it done for the Canes?
If you look at the top nine, it seems like each line has a duo that has really started to gel and established an identity for their line. That you have Aho with Jarvis and the way that they're clicking and connecting with the goal scoring and the point streak, and they're doing it in a lot of different situations. You look at the Staal line, which is the Canes' identity line. No surprise, he and Martinook are dominating possession and that sort of thing, and they have the best goals for percentage of any of the lines. Again, not really a surprise because of the role that they play on the Canes and what they're trusted with. And then you look at how Stankoven and Blake very, very impressively are creating a lot of chemistry. They're learning each other's style of play, anticipating where they're going to be, and really just bringing that bulldog mentality to that line and pushing play forward, driving play, and just the tenacity that they're bringing. So those three lines with those duos on each duo on those lines has been very impressive to see, and it will be interesting moving forward, both with injury and with just creating chemistry, to see what Brind'Amour does as far as completing those lines with the additional winger.
Yeah, and we'll get into a bit of a discussion on that. Sebastian Aho, he's off to a good start. He's had some key goals. Of course, Seth Jarvis has been incredible. Aaron, what are you seeing with Seth Jarvis this year? What's changed?
I think honestly, what changed for him, I don't know if you guys all watched the Face Off Inside the NHL special with Seth Jarvis in it. I think we talked about that a little bit before. But I was struck by how determined he is to get to that next level and to, prove that he does in fact belong in this league and that he's, he is worthy of all of the things that are coming to him. So you see that mentality that he's putting in on the ice. I'm sure it's the same thing, on practices and the off the ice stuff too. But I see a tenacity that I didn't see before, I think, to make, get those second and third opportunities, to not, get muscled off the play as easily as he used to back in the day. But I also see that he's very adaptable. It seems like he's been very good at figuring out what Sebastian Aho is doing and then playing off of that. And Aho's the kind of center that he does not play well with every winger out there. You can't just rotate wingers next to him and have it all work. We've talked about this many times. There have been many wingers that, could have been top line wingers with the Canes, but it just didn't gel with Sebastian Aho. So I think having Jarvis be that guy that can just read off of him and know what he's doing and figure out how to maximize those opportunities that are getting created and then set, Aho up for those opportunities as well. We saw that really nice goal the other day, and just having that connection, that mental connection that allows them to thrive so much together on the ice. So, it's putting Jarvis in a position to, set an NHL record for the most game-winning goals in the first 4 or 5 games of a season. I think it was first 4, if I remember correctly. Yeah. And then he's had I think he's had 7 goals so far on the season.
He's got 7 goals, and he's tied for 4th in the league right now.
Yep. So, this is what we want to see from Jarvis. We all wanted to see a big year from him. He's going to be so key to the team's success. So the more these two can build, and then, like Katie said, rounding out that trio, we're going to get to the subject of Ehlers in a little bit, I think, but that's the key, is to figure out how to turn a duo into a trio. And I think I really like how both of them have been trying to do that, both Aho and Jarvis. I think that they will break through. So
yeah, Aho's been off to a good start. Actually, he's surprised me a little bit because he usually takes a little bit longer to get the engine going. So this year he's jumped off quickly. With Jarvis, one of the things that I started to see with Seth Jarvis is that he's taking more control of the team. Like he's a guy that, because of the character that he is and just the personality he has, he's just everywhere, right? And everybody loves him. He backs everything up with outstanding play, and I think that's really something that is going to be kind of critical over time. As he's starting to get more and more attention on him when the Canes play. Everybody wants to talk, of course, to Jarvis. They want to see what he's up to, and of course he's producing at such a great rate right now. And the other thing that we've heard about Jarvis, and we heard about this in the broadcast quite a bit, is that he has improved his foot speed, and this is using some kind of a special technique with what was it? Their ribbons or
resistance. Yeah, resistance bands.
Yeah, resistance bands. Mm-hmm. That's what it was. Yeah, resistance bands. I wanted to get that. But yeah, he was definitely working hard to improve that part of his game, and it shows. And he's not going to score 90 or 100 goals, but I think he's definitely on track for 40 or more goals this year, which would be huge for the Canes. Now, we talked a little bit about Jordan Staal. I know, Aaron, you're really excited about Jordan hitting 300.
He got goal number 300 and goal number 301, and we were all on hat trick watch for Jordan Staal, which is always such a funny thing when that happens at the beginning of the season. And he also, I believe it was the other milestone, was that he hit his 900th game as a Cane. We all know that he's been in the league a lot longer than that and has played many more games than 900. But that was still a special moment for the team because it puts him up there in terms of how many games a Canes player has played. He puts him right there. So. That was great to see both of those milestones get hit in. I think it was subsequent games. It wasn't both in the same game, but because we do kind of laugh about the Staal lines, getting lots and lots and lots of chances, but not really always cashing in. It was a great moment for the team, and I know that because they do really love their captain, that was a great moment for them to get to celebrate. So, and it was a lot of fun. I think that. I'm not sure if Martinook was more excited on the ice. It seemed like, but it was really special.
As you know, and they're tremendous part of the Canes DNA for sure. Yeah, so it's so great to see that, and it was fun. By the way, speaking of these milestones, it was so much fun seeing Brent Burns with his 1500th game, and
yes,
we're all over that, of course, and a lot of the Canes got together with Brandon and some of the other folks like Natchez and I think Drury as well. So that was I think that's great stuff, and I really like to see that because these are good friends, and yes, when they get on the ice, it's war, but be friends. One final thing on the duos, the Stankoven Blake thing. We did hear something interesting, and I think it is a part of why it's starting to work for them is that they're becoming very, very close friends. So those two guys are thick as thieves now. And I think, again, that kind of camaraderie really goes a long way. And we're seeing the connection on the ice as well. They're making a lot of plays together. They're looking for each other. You see it more and more all the time. And I think that's going to be great. And both of these guys are going to grow together. And, they'll have their bumps in the road for sure. But that's exciting. Now, when we talk about what was working with the duos, we know there are some concerns with some of the other areas. If we look at the scoring side, we've got some key players without a goal. Nikolai Ehlers has not scored, and Andrei Svechnikov, his story is even bleaker than that. Let's start with Andrei. Katie, what have you got to say about what's happening with Mr. Svechnikov?
Well, I'm going to start off with one thing that is a positive before we get into the plenty of critiques that there are as far as he is concerned. When you look at his Hockey Viz shot map, the majority of his shots are coming from right in front of the net. Okay. So at least when he is getting shots through and attempts on net, he is doing it from close range. He is doing it from places that are dangerous. He's using his size to get to those areas and create opportunities. He just hasn't cashed in yet. So at least there's that particular silver lining in what's going on. The problem is there's just not enough of it yet. He's not getting enough of those chances. Yeah. And it's going to be harder for him to find that footing because he's been bounced around due to the lack of production. He started up on the second line, then he got moved down to the fourth line, and now with the injuries, he's up with the Staal line. And so each place he has to figure out his line mates, he has to get reacquainted with them, he has to figure out where he's going to be. But it could end up being a good thing for him because he has played with the Staal line before. I do think, he still adds some size and as well as some skill to that particular group. So once he gets comfortable playing with them again, maybe it will help open up some opportunities for him to feel like himself once more, because I think that's been the biggest thing when I've looked at him is he doesn't feel like Andrei Svechnikov out there. He is not playing with the heart and the determination that we know he is capable of, that we saw in the playoffs just this last season. And so I want Svech to find his heart again. I want him to find that raison d'etre of his hockey game, of his reason for being who he is and providing that to the team, because he is so unique that the Canes are lacking size for their skilled forwards. He is the one who can fill that particular role. And until he finds his stride, it's just a big gap right now in their offensive production.
Aaron?
I would agree with that. And I think that there's a lot going on with Andrei Svechnikov. Some people have been pointing out on X that his slump in production to a certain extent goes back into last year and possibly even further than that, especially at 5-on-5. His 5-on-5 goal production, I believe, I would like to credit the account, but all of a sudden I can't remember which account brought this up. But he had 8 5-on-5 goals dating back to March of 2024. So we're talking 100, his last 100 games. He's only had 8 5-on-5 goals. So that's not the kind of production. Now, obviously, he's still scored a lot because he's put up a lot of points. He's still done a lot on the power play. He's still done a lot, in other circumstances, 3-on-3 overtime, that kind of thing. He's putting up a lot of assists. So his desire to pass the puck is very strong. We know that, unfortunately. But he's just not had the 5-on-5 production that he has needed. But when I look at that, though, when I break that down and look at that, you guys know that I'm a big believer in how time on ice really impacts production. And I was looking back through some of that, and Svechnikov has played almost all of his career with the Canes as a second line winger. He gets second line minutes. So when you really break down his production, though, he's producing for most of his seasons, I believe 4 of the 7 seasons, at or above a 70-point pace. Injuries have cut those points short, but he's producing at that pace most of those seasons. There are 3 exceptions. His rookie season, he did not produce at a 70-point pace. Everyone would be talking about that. The COVID-shortened 56-game season, he had fallen off right before the season ended. I think he would have probably come back up because they usually do, but he was a little shy of that point pace. And then last season he was only on a 54, I believe, point pace, 54 or 55. I can't remember now, but it was one of those. So he wasn't getting, even with the minutes he was getting and even with the time he was getting, he wasn't getting there. But I also think, gosh, we've been expecting, we're used to Svech that produces at a first line winger pace while playing on the second line. So that's been kind of the Canes have benefited from that. And last year he actually produced more like what you would expect from a second line winger. So I think that maybe we need to just kind of look at those expectations that we have and say how much of this, especially post all the injuries, especially with everything that's been going on with the deployment, how much of this could be corrected by just a run of good luck on the power play, getting himself back into the confidence that says I can score, because, nobody puts up that amount of points with second line minutes unless they're very, very good. So that version of Svechnikov has not gone away. And the people that are out on X calling for him to be traded, because he hasn't scored in 8 games, they're not looking at the picture of what's going on here. No. Whatever he needs to get in and fix, whatever's going on in his mind, he has to remember that he is an elite player.
Yeah.
And there's no reason whatsoever that he can't get back to that.
Yeah, I guess where I am on this is that last year was not a great year, I didn't think, for him. He had a
No.
great playoff, but he did not have a particularly good year. And look, he's an $8 million guy. He was a second overall pick. He's got to do much better. I mean, that's just it. He's got to do a whole lot better. And the Canes need him to do a lot better. I mean, that's the other side of it. And Katie, you're right. I mean, it's a small forward crew for the most part. And he's a guy that comes in and can make a difference. He's not getting it done. It's simple. He's not getting it done. And he's got to find his way back. And they're giving him chances, for goodness sakes. He was on the first power play for a long time. He was put on the second line for a while. Now he's with the dads, and they really helped him last year. Like, he struggled, he went with them. They kind of got him back on his game. And I think that's the hope right now is they can shelter him quite a bit, right? They can protect him. And all he has to do is go out and, add a few hits here and there and try to score a goal. But I'm not particularly happy with Svechnikov right now. And the longer this goes on, it becomes more difficult for the Canes. They need him.
I think that's true. But the one thing that I would say is that, listening to Rod in the post game this morning, or post practice this morning, he was talking about, that this is really just, that Svechnikov does care a little too much at times when he's going through these kinds of things. And that's when they start talking about they're gripping their stick too tightly. They're trying to make everything happen. They're frustrated, and the more frustration builds, the harder it is. But one little sign of maturity that I have to say here, that we should probably notice is that even with all of the things that are going on, he still doesn't have any penalties.
No,
and that is one of the only areas of concern I had about Jackson Blake, is that he's up there at the top. We tied for the top with 8 penalty minutes. we don't want Blake to start taking the undisciplined penalties. but in terms of Svech, I honestly think that maybe he should have just stayed on that second line just a little bit longer, because they were coming up against two relatively easy teams, and he got yanked, didn't he, in the beginning of the San Jose game? So, I mean, I think giving him just a little more time to gel with Stankoven and Blake would have been maybe more positive. I'm not sure why the decision was made to switch Hall up there that fast. So,
I definitely agree. I'd like to have seen him stay there longer, but I'm going to disagree just a touch while we don't want him taking undisciplined penalties, I do think the fact that he hasn't taken any yet shows that he doesn't have confidence in his power game. And
That's
when
true.
Svech is the most
Fair point.
effective, it's when he's playing at a power forward where he's combining size and strength and skill together. So no, I don't want him spending 2 minutes in the box every game, but at the same time, I want him to have that self-belief in who he is and the raw physical gifts that he has that make him such an effective player, and go out there and use it and use that body, because he doesn't have a lot of hits on the season. I think it's only like 5.
So,
5 hits. So and he's got to be a bigger physical presence in that. And I think if he can lean into that side of his game and say, okay, look, the points are going to come eventually. I can't control that. What I can control is how I go out and play. I can go out and play with the same kind of enthusiasm that Blake and Stankoven are playing with. But since I'm a big boy, I can go out and I can be even more impactful in the corners and make it life miserable for the other team to play against me, and get the puck away from them and find my line mates and create those chances. And being on the Staal line, they're already a good puck possession line. The Jordans are going to have the puck a ton, which is going to give Svech a lot of opportunities. So yeah, it would be nice if he had more time on that second line. But again, if he can get back to his identity of a power forward and go out there and play tough physical hockey next to Staal and Martinook, it could help jumpstart him, and that's what I'm really hoping for.
Well,
absolutely.
I'm happy he's with Staal and Martinook, frankly, because he played well with them last year. And to your point, Katie, and this is kind of where I was not so happy with Svech, is that when players who drive offense are not scoring and not, doing much offensively, usually they lean on the other parts of their game. That's really the way it works, right? So, they improve their defensive side, or they're laying the hits on, or, they're doing something. They're contributing in some way. And you can sit there and say, yeah, the goals are going to come. They're going to get their points, but he's making something happen out there. And that's been back to this whole question of, what's really going on with Svetch. And yeah, maybe he's beating himself too much up when he looks in the mirror and says, hey, you're not getting it done. But ultimately, he's got to start to do that. And he can. I mean, we don't know of a physical injury of any kind. I haven't heard of anything. So, the only person that's kind of holding himself back is him. So we need him to start to get out there, get in the game, get his face into it, start making things happen, and ultimately success will follow. And I keep coming back to the same thing. The Canes need Svechnikov to be Svechnikov. I mean, we look at
Absolutely.
last year in the playoffs, you heard the announcers, and they were just going crazy. They were just,
Yeah.
saying this is the power forward, that you really want on your team, and he's on the Canes, and we've been waiting for him to do this kind of thing. And he just was dominant at times. And how do you go from being so dominant to struggling like this? And I actually expected him to come out this year, out of the gate and just continue on. That's why I'm.
Well, one thing I think that people have discussed is that he actually had a very good training camp in preseason. He was looking great, and then he took that really awful hit, in the last game against Nashville. And some people have pointed that. Now I don't think there's a physical injury, because I don't think they would be letting him play, especially since that was before all the other injuries happened. So they could have sat him out if he needed to sit out. But just because it wasn't a physical injury doesn't mean that it didn't kind of give him a little bit of that mental setback of, maybe I should be reining things in a little bit more. I don't want to end up with another injury. I don't want to end up sidelined again at an important moment, and I mean, I know from people who've suffered those injuries before that getting over the fear of a relapse or a subsequent injury is very difficult. So it could be that that's in his head. So
I think you're onto something, because he did have that really serious injury that it took him quite a while to come back from it, and maybe it's lingering in his head, like, who knows, right? And you're right. These guys, sometimes they're not the same when they come back after these injuries. So we just have to wait and see. I hope there isn't something else, like personal or otherwise, that's underneath all this. I hope that he's fine in that regard, and he'll find his way through it for sure. It's only 8 games, and that's not a season by any stretch of the imagination. Now, the other guy that's kind of getting tight with his hands on the stick and will continue to do so, and probably more so in the coming days, of course, is Nikolai Ehlers. One of the things you would have hoped is that he would have got a goal quickly and get that off his back and be able to, the monkey off his back, and be able to go forward. But not the case. And I still am waiting for him to be a little bit more dominant. I saw him do some things with Winnipeg that seemed to really, they were incredibly impressive at the time, and I haven't seen so much of that with the Canes. What are your thoughts on that, Katie?
I think it's just a matter of time. Coming to a new team, you just need to be able to adjust to get to know not only your line mates, but all of your teammates and the
Yeah.
systems and how they're played. Um, I think I think we should start to see it pick up a little bit more. I remember a couple of seasons ago when they were talking about Jonathan Drouin having joined the Avs, and
Right.
after the first 10 games, everyone was ready to ship him off. He's done. He's no good. Get him out of here.
Yes.
Just nonstop talk about that. And it was about game 12 or so where it's like it all clicked, it all made sense, and he took off and had a fantastic season 2 seasons
Yeah.
ago. I expect something like that to happen with Ehlers as well. I think over the next handful of games, it's going to be like, okay, click, I got it. I understand now. I've been playing with Aho and Jarvis long enough that it makes sense. He's already starting to pick up the assists. I think that will end up
Yeah.
growing into goals. And watch out if that line starts humming, where it's not just Aho and Jarvis doing marvelous things, but Ehlers is getting up to their level as well. They are going to be one of the best top lines in the league for sure, because they have so many weapons, both in the playmaking as well as the goal scoring department.
Well, that brings up an interesting question because, of course, back to the social media discussions on several different platforms, they've been suggesting that Ehlers should be moved off that line. They're suggesting other changes, and that brings up an interesting discussion: is do we think the wingers are in the right places? Like we talked about the duos, do we think that the folks who are currently manning those other spots on those lines are the right ones? Or should there be some other moves that we think, as coach of the squad, should be done? Um, Aaron, what are you thinking? Are the lines the way they should be?
I think that there's always room to change things up in some senses. I'm not as quick to do that, I think, as Rod Brind'Amour usually is. But one of the things that's interesting to me is that Ehlers is, basically stapled to that line, and I don't think he's going to be moved off of the Aho and Jarvis line. I think that they want that line to work. I think they need it to work because, like Katie said, that would be such a threat. The Canes have not had an offensive threat on their top line. That they've had. I mean, obviously Aho and Jarvis have been really good, but they haven't managed to get that trio that when you see them come over the boards, your first reaction is, oh no, the way it is when it's McKinnon and and company.
Nature.
So natures, yep. So we think that I think that that's part of it. But now one of the things that I find interesting is I think that in a previous season, if Rod Brind'Amour had acquired Nikolai Ehlers when, say, Vincent Trocheck was still on the team, I think that there would have been some rotation. There would have been, oh, you know what, let's take the pressure off. Let's put him on the second line for a little bit. You're not going to do that when you're easing Logan Stankoven into playing center at the NHL level in his first season, because that is way too much responsibility and pressure for a 22-year-old who is playing center for the first time in the NHL. You just can't. And that's one of the things about the Stankoven line that we're going to, I think, have to realize is that they're not going to be putting people there as randomly as they have done in the past. I mean, I think we all know that when the center rotation was however many games of Kotkaniemi and then however many games of Jack Drury and then however many, the wingers also rotated a lot on both of those, in both of those scenarios. But you're not going to see that with Logan Stankoven at 2C because he's just now starting to play center in the NHL. And Rod Brind'Amour is very careful about that, especially with a player that he obviously has a lot of high hopes for. So you can't put Ehlers next to Stankoven. So he's got to play next to Aho. It's not going to happen that they're going to do that. I don't think, it could happen at a shift here or there, but you're not going to do that for a game. On purpose, unless there's some other circumstance going on that we don't want to think about in terms of injury. That creates a problem, though, in a sense to me, because one other winger that I think we've talked about is whether Taylor Hall belongs on that line with Blake and Stankoven. And I think the reason Taylor Hall is on that line primarily is because he's a veteran player with a lot of experience and a lot of savvy and the ability to, not only keep some of the more predatory opponents at bay, but also to negotiate with officials when needed, because, the officials are going to be more willing to engage in conversation with a seasoned veteran and with a lot of, than with two 22-year-olds who are, in their mind, maybe causing some havoc. So you've got to have that presence. So that also kind of, I think, ties their hands a little bit. Now, if Svechnikov can get his game back, and they can put him back with them. He's certainly not new to the NHL. This is his 8th season, so he can take that role. But apart from Svechnikov, you're not going to be putting the one thing I want to just get out here right now for all those people out there that are already doing this. You will not be putting Bradley Nadeau with Logan Stankoven and Jackson Blake at this juncture, not now. It's not going to happen. It may never happen because of the size issue, but even if they decide that's not going to be a big problem given the strength of Nadeau, please stop telling Rod Brind'Amour to put Nadeau with Stankoven and Blake. They're not going to listen to you. It's a lost cause. Same situation. You can't have 3 guys with that little experience in their current roles and that age, that young of an age, on a line together that is taking that much time on the ice and having that many minutes. It's just not going to happen.
But Aaron, it's creating a bit of a problem because Bradley Nadeau is not a fourth liner. Okay.
No, he's not.
He's being wasted on the fourth line.
Yep.
He's a player that is clearly ready to play in the National Hockey League and certainly has the respect of Brind'Amour on the offensive side because he had him on that top power play. So that tells you a lot. I think they got to try to figure out how they can get Nadeau up higher in the lineup somehow. I really do. And I don't know how that's done yet. I don't. I mean, you're pushing the buttons to say, hey, he shouldn't be on the second line. He's not going to be on the first line. Where does he go? I think at some point, Nadeau is going to have to get a look on one of those lines because he's just too good to be on the fourth line. And I think he's a better player than a Taylor Hall. Okay, I think he's a guy that has a bigger upside, of course, for sure. And I'd like to see him playing and getting the minutes. And that's the challenge you've got. And I understand why all the folks are screaming on X and other social media platforms because I'm not happy with him playing on the fourth line and getting, light minutes. I mean, even in short play, he gets opportunities. He's a guy that's around the puck. He gets great shots. I mean, he is an offensive, gem. He can really play. And again, I don't think he needs to do a whole lot more in Chicago. And if he goes back there, that's fine. But boy, his defensive play in the last game was probably the best of most of the forwards. I mean, he was tremendous. So I don't know how much additional work he needs there as well. But again, it's a challenge that Rod's going to have is to figure out how to cast this forward crew. And of course, there's more complexity that could come into this later because we fully expect at some point that Tulsky's going to try to bolster the forwards. He's already been talking about that. So what does that mean? Who moves, who goes, and how does it change the forward lineup as well? Again, the lineup looks good. It doesn't need a lot of change right now. I mean, they're winning games. That's fine. You can always improve. And I think the challenges that we are going to continue to see are, I mean, Stankoven has got some work to do. He's got to improve his face-off side for sure. He's been spending time with Rod trying to get a little bit better in the dot. He's been sitting at, somewhere around 45%. So he's got to do a lot better in the face-off dot. And he's still working, to figure out how he's going to do his defensive work. And one of the things that we do see occasionally with that line is they're being overpowered. They're being outmuscled. And that's a concern for me, a big concern. And particularly, these are the easy days. This is the early part of the season. Wait till we get into the tough, kind of final quarter and into the playoffs. It's completely different. And I think that's something that's got to be addressed somehow because we just don't have a big enough forward crew. If you talk about our, 5 of the top 6 forwards aren't big guys, right? So this is something that's going to have to be addressed. But anyway, some concerns up there. We'll see how it plays out. I don't see Rod making any changes. He's not going to move anybody around right now. I don't see that at all.
Not at the moment, no.
No. And so, for those of us who would like to be armchair coaches or GMs or whatever, I don't think we'll have a chance to do much. Now, if we want to take this a step further, of course, one of the areas that has been incredibly painful has been the power play. And it's just woeful. We've gone through stretches where the power play hasn't been very good. But I don't think we've gone through a stretch where it's been this bad. So they're 2 for 29. So that's a massive 6.9% success rate so far. I don't know what the leader is. It's probably somewhere around 35% or something. It usually is. So, it's a little bit of a gap between them and the top of the league. So a little bit of work to do. Now, they've been missing the Goss Despair, of course. We hope he's coming back soon. But what are we seeing with the power play in general? Katie?
I think there's a lot of indecisiveness that happens on the power play. I think it's very much keeping too much to the perimeter. It's just contradicting the way that the Canes are playing 5-on-5, which has been so successful for them. You think they just lean into that even more on the power play. You look at the Hockey Viz chart for their 5-on-5 production, and the majority of their production is this dark red splotch right in front of the goal, and they're finishing their chances. I know it's crazy. The Canes are finishing their chances 5-on-5. Why is this not translating their highest skilled players that are creating all this 5-on-5 when they have more space and more opportunities to take advantage of defenses? And so it's really kind of baffling because when you look at the Hockey Viz chart for the power play, there's this big blue spot in front of the goal. So how is it going from lots of chances 5-on-5 to very little chances on the power play? And I think they're just trying to be too perfect. They think that all of a sudden they need to become Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl out there instead of being the Canes, and working the puck in, getting, not just shooting from the point like they used to do when Burns was on the power play, and create chances, but chances, try to snipe it, but snipe it in such a way that if it doesn't go in, it creates a rebound, it creates an opportunity. Get the guys like Blake, or what should be Svechnikov's role as the power forward, in there battling for loose pucks and either getting them back out to the other players for additional chances, or banging home the rebounds if that opportunity is available. They need to be a little bit more lunch pail when it comes to it, and a little more straight line approach until it starts working. All of this looking for the perfect pass, trying to make that one extra perfect play so it's a slam dunk of a goal, that is just not working, and they need to reset and recreate the power play in a more meat and potatoes sort of approach.
Yeah, Aaron?
I agree with all of that. I think there was I think it was, I don't remember, but I think it was Adam Gold the other day said they should just put the Staal line out there, and he was only half joking. If it wasn't for this beat issue, it would probably have already been done. But I mean, I think that there's, there was an interesting article that was just posted shortly before we sat down to record by Ryan Henkel, and he said that there's two problems that we haven't really touched on with Katie's discussion. One is that they're only winning about 44% of their power play faceoffs, and that is not good. You have to win power play faceoffs, especially since the other problem is that they're not very good right now. After a good first two games at home, they have not been good at entering the zone if they lose possession. It has been very hard. It's been a battle they can't seem to get through, and that may be part of where that size issue comes into play. You have a lot of skilled forwards, but they're very small for the most part. It is hard to get through four large penalty killers on the other team if your skill guys are on the smaller side. It's just going to be that way. The first unit has had more trouble than the second unit, which is interesting because, there's small players on both. But the other thing is that even though the Canes have not suffered the indignity of a shorthanded goal against yet, they are close to the bottom in terms of giving up shorthanded chances. I think Henkel said that they were in the same rank as right near the Calgary Flames, and we all know the Flames haven't been doing well. So you don't want to be giving up those shorthanded chances, and you don't want to be losing those faceoffs, because then you can't get back in the zone. That's definitely limiting their ability to do the one thing they really, really need to do that they're not doing, which is to get in front of the net. They need to get in front of the goaltender. They need somebody who's there, the net front guy, to screen the goaltender, to, like Katie said, pounce on those rebounds. And that's where I look at even the ideal units with Ghost Despair back and Ghost Despair is Halloween. Anyway, with Shane Ghost Despair, he is coming back. I believe that they're not positive that he's going to play tomorrow, but it will be either tomorrow or the next game. So that's actually really good news. Mm-hmm. But having Ghost back on the power play is going to mean that they're going to have some of those problems go away. He is better at, getting those zone entries. He's better at helping to prevent the breakaways, so I think that's going to help with the first unit a lot. So it's the defensive issues have definitely impacted the power play. They just have, and not having the personnel. I think that when Rod was talking about it in his postgame today, he did say that, having different players out there all the time has been difficult because he feels like they can't even get to what they want to do. But my question, though, was looking at the players that he wants out there, even, who is the net front? Who is the net front, and how do they get that net front? Even if they're rotating off, which they usually do, you don't want a static power play. You don't want people in fixed positions. But somebody has to have that job that you're not standing from a distance sniping beautiful goals. You're just there to muck around, like Katie said. You've got to be the person. We had Stefan Nason in that role a couple seasons ago. There have been other players who have taken that role. So somebody has to be willing to get in there and do that, and they just need to figure that out. I think once they figure that out, a lot of other pieces will fall into place.
Well, I think you're right, and a couple of things that I see is that, I mean, we used to have lots of shots from the blue line. Of course, Brent Burns, if he was out there, it was he'd just wail away like crazy, right? We don't get as many, and that's something that I'm finding generally, and certainly on the power play. The difficulty getting into the zone, of course, we've had that since Marty Nate just left, and he was tremendous at that. And it's interesting that Logan Stankoven seems to be pretty good. You said that the second group is getting in a lot, and he
Hmm.
seems to
They're
be
getting in
moving.
easier. Hmm.
But I think there was an expectation that Nikolai Ehlers would help with that because he's a guy that has had success in the past in winding up in the zone and getting into the offensive zone quite nicely. Just hasn't been able to get that done. But if you look at the idea of a power play, successful power play usually has one of two things or both. And one of them is that they do have those big guys in front and are able to deflect pucks. Like a lot of deflections are the way you score these goals.
Hmm.
And so you've got your point guys firing away, and there's deflections in front. The other thing is, and we've talked about this repeatedly, is having somebody on the flanks that can really fire the puck. Okay, and Aho can and does on occasion, but he doesn't get free enough. Jarvis is not that guy. He gets some that way, but that's not really what his forte is, I don't think. So you've got a situation where you really don't have that fear factor, right? Like if Ovechkin's out there, or you've got what used to be Stamkos and other guys that used to just wail away, and they put fear into you. The Canes have not had that for an extended period, and we all kind of hoped a guy like maybe Svechnikov could be somebody like that, a big guy that could fire the puck or whatever, but it's just not happened. So again, I think that's an item that they're missing, and these, it's getting tougher to score goals like that. These goalies are so good. They're big, they're
Hmm.
good. You don't just get an easy goal. It's usually a greasy goal. It's deflected off somebody, or it's like the other night, it goes off a guy like Riley and into your net, and who knows, right? So I think they've got to solve some of this. The makeup of the power play right now, I think, is a bit of a concern. And I think even with Gossespierre when he was there, the numbers weren't great. I mean, he's
Hmm.
missed the last 5 games or whatever, but previously the numbers didn't look that good either. So he's been having a great season. I think he started probably with his best year that we've seen, and I was really excited about that. So I'm hopeful he can come back in and bring some excitement to that power play. But they've got to solve this, and it's a concern. And if we look back for so long, how long have they had these challenges? I mean, 2 years ago, I think it was unbelievable how bad the power play was, and in the going into the playoffs. So something is not kind of gelling with their view of a power play or how they do it. I'm not sure, but this is something they're going to have to address. So we'll see. Um, Now, power play, forwards, goals. Now, they're interestingly enough, the Canes are near the top in goals per game,
Hmm.
which is kind of an interesting thing. Despite all this we're talking about in the power play and some of the forwards not getting it done, they're still getting goals. So it's great. Um, but I think the story right now is the decor. You've got Keandre Miller stepping up, and I thought he was playing tremendous hockey and seeing big minutes,
Excellent.
Yeah.
20 plus minutes a game. And then he goes, and it just gets worse. And of course, Gossespierre went down as well. So, and he was playing the best hockey that I think he has as a Cane. So, it's kind of a series of events that if you could write a script and say this is the worst that could happen, I think it's happened to the Canes. So that's what happened. What have we seen? What did we like? Why don't you kick it off, Katie?
What I've liked is I've liked how Nikishin has stepped up and really taken some extra minutes, because at the start of the season he was sheltered there with Ghost. They were getting, the first 2 games, the Canes got to choose the matchup, so they were very selective in when they put him out there, and the types of looks that they were giving him. But with Slavin being out, Miller being out, Ghost being out, a lot of the responsibility fell to him as being the third most tenured defenseman on the blue line behind Walker and Chatfield, which is crazy to think of. But Riley's brand new this year, and then you had the rookies coming up, or the prospects coming up. So that has really impressed me how well he has shouldered that, and it means that he's also had some mix up. He started with Ghost goes out injured, so he has to have new partners, and I think he's played with 2 or 3 different D partners along the way, and shown that he can adjust his game, and he's playing the heavy game we were expecting. He has lots of hits, and he's very steady and heads up and smart hockey. I mean, not super flashy. It was great to see that one goal. That one goal showed not just the skill, but the vision that he possesses when it comes to that end of the ice. And in more subtle ways, that vision is what's serving him well in his own zone. So that, I think that's what's really stood out to me, is the fact that Nikishin seems to be coming into his own defensively. And then as he grows and gets more confident, that will allow him to activate more readily and more frequently up in the O zone and provide that particular wrinkle to the Canes game that they really need, because they have not been getting the offensive production from their D-core due to all of these changes that have been going on that they normally have enjoyed in the past. So looking forward to seeing what Nikishin has to offer as he grows and gets more confident moving forward.
Yeah, and of course he's been killing penalties as well, and doing a solid job of that. And I think the biggest challenge, and you see it occasionally with him, still trying to figure out the system. You know, am I supposed to be here or there? And you see it happen. He kind of, where am I supposed to be? But for the most part, he's getting more comfortable, and as he does, of course, he's certainly starting to show some of the talent that we expected. One thing with Nikishin, though, and we've started to realize this, he's not necessarily fleet of foot, because we've seen him lose some races coming in, forwards coming in fast, and you just can't turn quick enough and can't catch up. So he's just got to be positionally sound, and I think he's realized in a short period of time, this NHL is a lot faster than the KHL. So I think it's all part of the learning for him, but he's definitely coming along strong. And the bigger thing too is as we've talked about many times, he's still trying to figure out the language, and that's going to be a big bonus once he gets more comfortable with English as well. Now, other folks, Aaron, that you've seen on the blue that have you've been pleased with?
Well, I think we have to give the flowers a little bit to Sean Walker because of how much he has had to do and how well he has done it. I mean, there were people that were, not that pleased that the Canes were planning to use Walker as heavily already this year, just with the new acquisitions and everything. And then to have him step up and just take over things, as part of that first pairing and just be, solid every night that he's been there. And it's just, I think that's been great. And Mike Riley too. He's, we should talk about him as well, being a good veteran and just, you don't notice him, and that's a good thing. You don't notice him a lot, occasionally, but not, just very a veteran presence, somebody that can steady things down when the young guys get a little bit flustered or whatever the case might be. As far as the young guys coming in, it was great to see Charles Legas get some ice time, and he played very well. And then I know your guy, Yoel Nystrom, you're going to probably want to talk about him. He's been great too. And now we have Fensori called up for the possibility that Gostisbehere might, if he can't go. So this has been a lot of fun for you, Tom, I know, because these are your guys. These are the ones you talk about. So I'm going to turn the question back to you. What have you liked about your Wolves players that have come up?
Well, for sure. And interestingly enough, Nick Bass and I were talking about Yoel Nystrom last summer. And I thought I'd just play this piece from Nick because, boy, he had it right on. Let's listen to Nick.
Yoel Nystrom, I know Darren York's incredibly high on him, and he has very good reason to be high on him. His two-way game is among the best in there. Kind of like how Morrow is just really good offensively, and Charles Alexis Legault really good defensively. Yoel Nystrom is probably the best of both worlds, where he is good defensively and good offensively in both regards. He is playing as a top pairing defenseman for Färjestad, which is one of the better teams in Sweden. He's an exceptional defenseman. He gets some power play time, even though it might not be the biggest. I like his offensive game. His skating is good. Everything about Yoel Nystrom is something to like. He is playing this next year with Färjestad, but after that, I would not be surprised to either see him somehow snag a role with the Hurricanes next season, not this upcoming, but the season after, or he gets a top pairing role with the Wolves and he has a lot of ice time there and probably is the first one on the call up sheet if an injury or something like that.
Okay, so pretty cool stuff from Nick. That's great stuff. Interesting thing about Joel Nystrom, 1602 his first game, and he played 132 on the power play and 424 killing penalties. And then 1757 his last game, and that was more time on ice than both Legault and Riley. In fact, almost double what Charles Alexis Legault got. So I knew that, with the way things were going, I fully expected Legault would head back to Chicago. But, if you watch Nystrom, Nystrom is a guy that, we talked a little bit about him before. He's just confident on the ice. Like, he just goes about his business. He doesn't get flustered. He's quick. One of the biggest things about him, and Nick talked about this, his skating is amazing. Like, this guy can really, really skate. And interestingly enough, in the last game, you started to see Nystrom alongside Nikishin. So they started to be the pair, and I think that's the pair we're going to see in the next game as well. Because, again, Nikishin, he's doing his stuff, but Nystrom can cover quite nicely. And he's a smart, heady player. I mean, that's one of the biggest things you see with him. The interesting thing is both of these guys are 23 years old. Mm-hmm. So it's not like you're talking about a 17 or 18-year-old. Both of them have several years of kind of major league hockey under their belts, playing with men. So I think that's a key point of this. And so I think I'm excited about Nystrom. I think he's kind of quietly come into the mix, and is a guy that is going to push for a position with this Canes team. At some point, even as they go forward, they're going to start to think about that. What have you seen when you've watched him out there? I mean, I've been effusive about him, but what have you seen? Have you seen anything that you really thought, hey, this guy looks like a player?
I think it's more about what you haven't seen than what you have seen, because like Aaron was talking about with Riley, is when the fundamentals are sound, he's just taking care of business and doing what he's supposed to be doing, and not being noticeable in the wrong ways. So with someone who hasn't played before, especially, what was impressive was the story about him getting called up in the first place and barely making it to the rink in time to sub in for Miller, because it was in that Colorado game, wasn't it, when he came in, when Miller took warmups. The initial thought was that Miller was going to play, and then it was kind of decided, no, we're not going to risk this. We're going to pull him. We're going to play it safe. And on he comes to take his spot, having barely arrived from the airport. I don't think he even got a chance to stretch. I think they said he didn't even stretch. He got to the rink, got in his gear, and it was time for the game to start. So, major props and kudos to him for that, and just coming in and holding down the fort the way that the Canes needed him to do so, especially considering what a marathon that game was, because it was back and forth. It was a heavy game, especially because the Canes got out to that lead, and then they were under the gun the entire rest of the game, and Nystrom helped make sure that they weren't going to be completely overwhelmed, and help them get to that overtime where they could secure that second point. So yeah, good. Kudos to him. Well done. I'll be especially if Ghost comes back, I'll be interested to see how they use him and trust him moving forward. But it's definitely a good couple games to build on.
Yeah, and a right shot guy. Now, interesting, both he and Charles Alexis Legault, one of the benefits that they have right now, of course, these guys are running the same system. So Cam Abbott's got these guys, ready to go. And I'm sure when the call comes down to Abbott from Tulsky and whoever else is talking to him, saying, okay, who should we be bringing up? These guys they're being schooled the right way. So I think it's great. And to take that to the next level, the guy that we also talked about, Dominic Fensori, he's off the charts right now, this guy. He's got 7 points in his first 4 games. He's terrible. We've seen Dom, exhibition games. We've seen him for a few games last year. What did we see when we saw him?
Well, I think he's a very smooth skater. That jumps off the page at you. When you see how fluid he is on the ice. He just makes skating look easy. He doesn't make it. There are skaters that remind you that ice is slippery, and there are skaters that don't. And he does not. He's a very smooth skater, and I think he's very fast too. I don't know. I haven't looked at his edge stats, but he seems like he's quite fast. So, those are the kind of qualities you want. From a skate somebody, and then he seems to have a very good hockey IQ as well. He seemed like he knows where to be and how to get there, and does his job very well in terms of figuring out what's going on and what he needs to do. So those are the qualities you want to see in a young defenseman for sure.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things with Dom, of course, he came out of Boston University. He was a Hobey Baker nominee 2 years in a row. He was a Hockey East All-Star. He was a whole bunch of things. He was just a tremendous player in college. And I think one of the things he's had to learn is, as a smaller player, how do it's quickness, it's leverage, it's, there's a lot of different things they have to do to be solid in the defensive zone. And that's something he really worked hard on. And in fact, he was doing a lot of penalty kill work as well. Of course, he's known for his power play, but also doing some serious penalty kill work alongside his partner last year, who was Charles Alexis Legault. So I hope he gets in. I'm a huge fan of Dom's. I think he's a tremendous player. And one thing that if Ghost can't go, Dom is a tremendous power play quarterback. He's magic back there. So I would hopefully see him and his buddy Bradley Nadeau. So yeah, lots coming out of Chicago, and it's interesting. The other day in the podcast with Andrew Rinaldi. Of course, we talked a lot about Dom, and also, of course, Yoel Nystrom, because he hadn't been called up yet. He was just getting called up, so he had been playing some games with Chicago. The Canes are loaded on the blue with prospects. I mean, if you think about it, they're bringing in players that can play. So this is exciting. At some point, we'll have the full defense back. That'll be kind of interesting. Something we don't really.
We look forward to it.
So yeah, for sure. So it's been kind of an interesting run. The goaltending's been great. Some challenges up front we got to work on, and of course the defensive concerns because of injury. But they're hanging in there. And boy, now we have to look ahead and see what the future holds. So as we kind of wrap up the discussion, I thought maybe we just take a look at what's in store for us and how we think things are going to go in the coming days. Maybe you could kick it off, Aaron.
Well, I think that, right first up, I believe they have Vegas. And, after that game that they didn't do so well, and I think that there's going to be some desire to, turn the tables on the Golden Knights and maybe get the win out of this one. It is a hard task. Brind'Amour mentioned Eichel and Marner being big threats, and that they're going to have to try to shut them down. And that is where having a core of inexperienced defensemen can be a little bit more tricky. But on home ice, I never count the Canes out. I don't think that that's something that we want to do. They have 2 home games, I believe, and then a couple of quick road trip games, and then a couple more at home. So they're going to have 4 of their next 6 at home, and I think that that's going to be a big indication as the injured guys start to come back into of how they really are doing. One thing that Katie brought up the Colorado game and how they got off to such a strong start and then it got chiseled away. One thing that somebody mentioned, and again I just don't have it in front of me, but the Canes have been scoring very well in first periods. Yeah. This season so far, which is a little unusual for them. That's not usually their best, scoring. They oftentimes play to a standstill in the first and then they start scoring. But it has been falling apart more in second and thirds, and the second periods have been particularly difficult for them. So I think that that's going to be something to watch for is, being able to play that full 60 and continue to get chances and continue to score. I know a lot of that is probably the artifact of not having their defensive core, not having their guys. But it is something at home, again, like I said, I never count them out at home because having home ice, having the matchups, getting the time that they want with the players they want on the ice, I would think that that's what I'm going to be watching for a turnaround. keep the scoring going into the second and third periods, and keep the other team from taking advantage of their lapses in those periods, because that's what's been happening a lot.
Yeah. Katie?
I think what I really want to see is I just want to see the Canes take care of business against the teams that they need to just go ahead and put away. They've had quite the gauntlet this past week with Vegas, Colorado, Dallas, now Vegas again. Once they get into that, past this Vegas game, there are a few more teams that have been struggling, and I hope that the Canes really come out and, like Aaron said, play the full 60, but not just play the full 60 to a one-goal game, one-goal lead. I want them to play where they really, truly dominate from the beginning of the game to the end of the game against the competition that they should be beating like that. If they are really a top team, they don't need to play with their food. They just need to go in, do their thing, use that as an opportunity to get the power play rolling and build so that they are stronger when they do have to face those high-end teams once again. So I think that's what I'm looking forward to over the next stretch, is just seeing how the Canes are able to refine their game now that they're home, and once they have a few more, you don't want to take them for granted. They're easier opponents, but they're still an NHL hockey team. Definitely. So they can win on any given day, but these are teams that they should beat, and they should beat handily if they are playing to their identity and playing for the full 60.
Yeah, and again, home ice is a welcome opportunity for the Canes. They've been away for almost 2 weeks. That's a tough slug. And now they should be, as a team, much closer and much tighter. And they talk about this a lot, that these are great team bonding situations. And that's a great thing, because we know as the Canes get together and start to really, gel as a team, they are tough to beat. And even sitting right now, like last week, it was interesting to see the Athletic with their power rankings with the Canes at number 1. So that was kind of a wonderful thing that we can enjoy. We don't know if they'll be back up there anytime soon, but that was exciting. In any case, they're going to have a lot of home games over a short period of time, and I think that's the opportunity for them to kind of get back on track, get some injured players back. And we're hearing, I think, some positive things on a lot of the players. We've heard that Ghost is close. We've heard that maybe K'Andre Miller is not that far away, right? And also that Robinson and Carrier are not going to need surgery. So that means it's probably weeks away as opposed to months. So good news on that. We'll continue to track this closely, and I'm sure as they start to get some of these home games under their belt, we'll have a chance to talk about that and see how it's all kind of progressing, and hopefully in a good way. In any case, for those of you who've been watching or listening, as always, we're delighted that you spent time with us. If you like this episode, please press the like button. And of course, if you have comments or you just like to say hi, please put those in the comment section down below. And if you'd like to be alerted of future episodes of Storm Tracker, please press the subscribe button and the bell, and we'll let you know just as soon as they're available. Thanks again for joining us today, and we'll look forward to getting together with you real soon right here on Storm Tracker.